The Accidental Entrepreneur is brought to you with the help of our sponsor, AWeber, the world's leading small business email marketing and automation service provider. Since 1998, AWeber has helped more than 1 million small businesses and entrepreneurs through its suite of web-based email marketing, automation tools, and education. AWeber, the best option when it comes to marketing your business. The podcast is also brought to you by the Alternative Board. Since 1989, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has been one of the leading peer advisory and business coaching organizations for independent business owners and CEOs across the world. By facilitating peer advisory boards, private one-on-one coaching, and strategic planning services, TAB helps business owners improve their businesses in ways that change their lives. And be sure to connect with our affiliate sponsor, GSM Growth Agency. They're boosting e-commerce businesses to 6 and 7 figures in revenue and cover everything from ads and social media influencers to making your website better. GSM Growth Agency focuses on taking businesses from startup success to bigger success, going above and beyond to make sure growth sticks around. They're all about cool ideas, lasting partnerships, and making your mark in the e-commerce world. And be sure to support the podcast by ordering some logo merchandise from our online store. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services. All right, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am Mitch Beinhecker, your host. We are back after the summer. Take 2-month break, July and August, for some sanity, I guess. And Danny is our first guest for the fall. Today is September 6th, so this will probably be coming out sometime late in the end of the year when you'll be listening. So let's get on with the show. If you are listening on your favorite podcast directory, please leave us a 5-star review whenever you can. If you're watching us on YouTube, like the channel, subscribe, so we can keep connecting with guys like Danny and bringing you quality guests to talk about things, to give you advice, and help you get a hold of your business. So let's get on with today's show.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work, and they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinhecker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests, where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode. All right, a little slow with the trigger today, Danny. A little out of practice. Okay, so welcome to the show. I appreciate you coming on, taking the time out to talk to me. I always appreciate it. There's people all over the world that are talking to me, and they don't know who I am. So, and I think we connected through Podmatch, right? I get a lot of guests on Podmatch. It's a great site. I was a little skeptical when he started the whole thing, but it's really boomed, and yeah, he's doing a great job. All right, so why don't you start with your story? Let's go back, because you've had a bunch of companies and done a bunch of stuff, and then we can get into later in the show what Apollo 21 is. That sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, let's do it.
Awesome. Wow. Just start telling the story. All right. So I started my career in advertising and moved to New York City to work in, the mecca of all things advertising. And to make a long story short, realized very quickly in that world that the most fun I was ever going to have in advertising was during ad school. And basically just wasn't enjoying it anymore. And so all of that really
Were you with any of the big ad houses like Ogilvy and Mather, Gray Advertising, those kind of things, or were smaller shops?
Mostly smaller shops.
Right.
The last kind of sizable agency that I worked at was a place called Merkley and Partners, which is kind of mid-sized. But we were working on Mercedes-Benz and Mrs. Butterworth syrup, and it wasn't small potatoes stuff by any means.
Right. But you had disillusioned pretty quickly.
I did. What I found was that I went through 2 years of a master's program to learn how to create amazing advertising and to be creative. And when I started making ads for the likes of Mercedes-Benz, it was generally a process of find whatever the closest existing ad in the files were that had already been created, open that up, change some text and an image, and kind of, realign everything and make it look nice, and then send it out.
Right.
And it was boring,
Yeah.
to put it bluntly.
Right.
So I kind of took it upon myself to find my way out of advertising, and I'd gotten really frustrated because, interestingly, I got into the world of advertising kind of right on the cusp of the technology boom. So yes, I'm older than I probably look at a glance.
Right.
And so, I had trained on creating newspaper and magazine ads and TV
Sure.
spots and things like that.
That was going
And then
away.
the internet happened.
Yeah, right, of course.
And so I just I got frustrated because, particularly the agencies where I found myself were not really giving consideration to what the impact of the internet was going to be
Right.
on the relationship between brands and customers.
Right.
And so I just sort of found my way out of that and started interviewing anywhere that was not a quote unquote ad agency. And, I was thinking about going back for a second master's program. I was thinking about going to South America to find myself, as as folks in your 20s are wont to do.
Right.
And
So get a master's or join the Peace Corps. You weren't sure.
yeah, exactly. It was
Right.
basically that toss up. It was master's degree or mountain climbing.
Right.
And I well, for better or worse, or lucky or not, however you want to view it,
Right.
I ended up getting a couple of job offers kind of all in the same 10-day period that really changed kind of my future outlook, and ended up moving on to work at an innovation consultancy here in New York that was called Poke, like Poke.
Okay.
And spent about 5 years there. I was one of the first 10 or so hires. They were maybe 2 or 3 months old when I joined the company, and it was just an utterly eye-opening experience for me, because it was the first place that I had ever worked where I really felt like the vision that the leadership team brought to the table aligned to my kind of way of thinking. And it was just utterly refreshing. And I remember, I'd get home from work and I'd be sitting down to eat dinner or something, and I'd have a thought, and I'd be sitting there with a spoon hanging out of my mouth, kind of
Right.
scribbling notes down. And it really just kind of fired me up and got me interested in work for the first time
Right.
in a way that I hadn't experienced. And
So what's an innovation consultancy? It sounds like an incubator of some sort, but not necessarily with other companies.
In some ways, yes. So basically, we were a kind of a weird bunch of people that saw the world in kind of a unique manner. And so it was not unusual for us to have a client call us in and basically say, okay, I've got those guys that are doing my website, I've got these guys that are doing my advertising, but I want you guys to come in and tell us what we're missing. Just help us figure out
Okay.
what opportunities there are that we're not taking advantage of. And
Right.
so, we were doing that type of work for American Express and Getty Images and Dyson, and, clients that were globally known and putting a lot of trust in us. And in turn, I was fortunate that the folks that ran Poke were putting a lot of trust in me. And so I had an opportunity to work on clients that I wouldn't have otherwise ended up in the room with for probably many years into my career.
Right.
And it really proved to be kind of an accelerator for my career path and my thinking and just kind of the way that I approached the world. And so, I spent about 5 years there helping to build out the practice and, figuring out kind of what it meant to be an innovation consultancy and what it meant for brands to interact with customers through the lens of technology at a time when the iPhone had just come out, social
Right.
media was
Very new.
booming. It was a
Sure.
really pivotal time
Right.
in kind of the cultural zeitgeist of how things were changing for people.
Yeah, it's harder to
And
reach people. It's different to reach people. They're on different
it
platforms.
was massively different. Yeah.
You know? Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you were doing more like, was it more like finding markets that they weren't reaching, or finding verticals that, hey, listen, all these people are now over here, and you're not really reaching them through newspapers and television as much as you used to?
It was some of that. It was a lot of working with companies to figure out what their social media strategy should look like. Should we
Okay.
build a mobile app? All of those types of things at the time. And
Right.
then as we, as a company, as Poke got its feet underneath itself, we started getting more and more projects that were helping to launch or envision new products and thinking about how technology could create new opportunities to bring value to customers.
Got it.
And
And now,
so,
and a lot of that stuff we take for granted now because everybody's on these platforms and that's where you reach
right.
them and that's you build these relationships with customers. But I guess back then, nobody really knew how it was going to pan out and so forth.
Exactly. It was all new at that time. And so the idea of, even the idea of offering customer service support through social media, for example,
Right.
was new. And,
Right.
there weren't many companies doing it. And consumers really quickly realized that, the teams that were running those kind of customer service accounts or those social media accounts were not buried in the same kind of politics and limitations that the traditional customer service team had. And so people very quickly realized that if you wanted to get something done, that was an excellent way to reach out to a company and to engage with them. And so
Sure.
in turn, that provided a lot of opportunity for companies as well in terms of how they thought about reaching customers and what that engagement might look like. And
Right.
so we did a lot of work helping companies envision what that future was and helping to craft sort of what those engagements look like.
That's interesting because sometimes even for clients, I will go onto LinkedIn and I'll find the general counsel or an upper level officer because I'm not getting anywhere through the normal channels. And next thing you know, you get an email. I get a call. Mr. Beinacker, I was told by this, and I got to resolve this today.
Right.
And there's a connection there. So yeah, I guess people find their way, right? Like if they're frustrated with one path and they know there's maybe another, they're going to look into it and they're going to say, well, what's their website say? How can I find this guy? Who's the person on here? They'll see all these people on LinkedIn and say, oh, here's the head of HR. I'm going to reach out to that person.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting. So you were at an interesting time though, when it was just kind of starting, because I think as small business owners, we take a lot of things for granted that we couldn't do when you first came out of school. A lot of the marketing and PR, it was all advertising, right? So now marketing, PR, advertising, there are like 3 different areas and things you can do as a small business owner that was very hard to do and very costly to do, back then. It really kind of changed the whole, landscape, right?
Right. Access to customers and access to, has also changed in the same way that, the changes in technology helped evolve the way that customers could reach companies. It also works in the other direction. And
Sure.
so I think that, a lot of the change that we've seen in the last, 20 years, really kind of is born out of that interaction and the ability and the proximity that technology brings to the relationship between companies and customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that customers, they do it works 2 ways. Either they can get more access or they can also insulate themselves. Door-to-door salespeople calling on the phone, trying to reach people is very hard to do nowadays. People don't want to be bothered. They didn't want to be bothered then, but they didn't have a choice. So now it's hard to reach the decision maker when it comes to, bigger sales and doing things. So how long were you with the innovation consultancy company?
I spent about 5 years there. And so it was a decent stint. And I felt for a long time like I was just continually learning, which is part of what held me in that position. And I really did learn a ton during that period. And then eventually decided to move on. My time there was also largely my introduction into the world of technology, the world of startups and entrepreneurship, et cetera. And what I found was my appetite really kind of veered towards that space. And so I left Poke. I started my first company coming out of that experience, and then spent the intervening, 12 or so years bouncing between founding companies or serving as head of product for a number of varying startups.
Got it. So you were basically their CMO, right? More from a marketing standpoint, handling business development, marketing, internet strategy, digital strategy, all that type of stuff?
For the startups that I was working with, you mean?
For the different startups.
No, so most of the work that I was doing was actually helping to define what their product was, what the value is that it brings to a customer, and then how that aligned to the business needs of the company that was trying to be created, and help kind of architect that that experience really. So, what are we making? Why do people want it? How do we make money off of it? What is the experience of using it, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So you were like the living, breathing part of a business plan that says, hey, if this product isn't right, doesn't work, there's no market, whatever, why are we doing this? Right. I mean, were there times where you had that discussion, said, listen, we're coming up that this is not something that people want, or you were really?
Oh yeah, that's a constant problem in the startup space. We tend to call that a solution looking for a problem. And it's
right.
It happens often when a founder gets really excited about solving a problem that they have or that they think people have.
Right.
And instead of doing the due diligence around robust validation, we are at my company, we're a huge proponent of the lean customer development process, which is entirely geared towards talking to people to understand their pain points, how to solve those pain points, and then aligning those solution opportunities to something that a business can offer to provide value and create a relationship.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, I'll say 99 times out of 100, the other way doesn't work. You have to believe as a business owner, an entrepreneur, and a creator that whatever you think the problem is that you're solving is not a problem that other people have. Or maybe they do and they don't care about it.
Right.
Because they're, most likely there would be other, maybe not doing it as well, but other people in the space if it was a problem that was constant, because people are constantly innovating. Mm-hmm. So then you got another mountain to climb. That's convincing people that what their problem is, let's assume they have the problem, right? 1, they recognize it. 2, they care. And 3, they want to do something about it. So that's a whole nother, it's hard enough, right, on your side of the world to get people to follow you and buy your product and learn about what you're doing, right? When they care. They don't care, even though they have the problem. Then you got a bigger problem. But I find that constantly. I've interviewed, 350 entrepreneurs. The ones that struggle are the ones that don't do the work up front, or they stop doing the work. They're not the ones that are really good are constantly asking their customers, right? And the marketplace, right? What's going on? Why are you doing this? This change. I see you don't do this. And they're in touch with, and like you said, they're not so excited about, they love what they do, but they're not so naive to think that whatever it is they're doing still works or people care. It doesn't, there's no correlation, right?
Yeah, there's an entrepreneurial adage that is basically you should fall in love with the problem and not the solution, because ultimately the solution is going to change. You're going to get it wrong the first time out of the gate, and probably the second, third, fourth, etc. But if you can commit yourself to a love of the problem, then the iterative process of going through and kind of finding that right solution and honing that solution to serve the customer need feels less like work and feels more like a mission.
Yeah, that's right. That's the psychological side of it. You won't be as frustrated if you're expecting there to be challenges along the way, right? Because if your focus is on the solution, on the problem, like you said, the fact that the solution doesn't work is less relevant.
It's a learning experience. It tells you what to do next, and it helps you understand, okay, that didn't work, I should try this, or somebody told me this, or that feature that we thought that everybody wanted, nobody's using, let's figure out why. Is it too difficult to use, or were we just wrong and shouldn't have built it? And in an ideal world, what we want to get to is understanding that need before it ever gets built, so that you don't spend the time and the resource to create something that nobody wants.
Right. And then you're out of money, or you're so frustrated, you say, screw this, I'm going to go work for my buddy, or, whatever happens. And that's a lot of big reason why people struggle in business, where they struggle first 2 to 5 years. Some of them go out of business. A lot of them go out of business 2 to 5 years. Then some still struggle. It's because they're not asking the right questions and they're not focusing on the right thing. And like you said, a process like the lean canvas, or, a simple business plan or a strategic plan makes a big difference instead of winging it. People just wing it.
Yes.
Winging
it is a tough strategy for business.
So what were you doing? You were more of a consultant at that point, working independent contractor for these different companies, or you were with the company?
No, I was with a couple of different companies over that period. So my then girlfriend, now wife, and I started our first company together as I was coming out of the innovation consultancy. We focused on that for a couple of years.
What did that do, Danny?
It failed miserably. It was a ton of fun, and I learned a ton.
Okay.
it failed miserably. So we had created a platform called Date Night Is, which
Okay, I think
was
you told me about
born.
that off the mic. Yeah.
Nice. It was born out of our experience. Met my wife online, as many people do these days,
Yeah.
and we had a moment of, well, wait, once you've met that person online, there's not really much online to continue supporting the growth of that relationship. And so that's what we
Okay.
were aiming to build, was something to support couples in relationships as opposed to
Like a
the
deeper
discovery
kind of
moment.
relationship. Okay. And why did it fail?
Uh, we did everything wrong. We were first
Okay.
time entrepreneurs.
Right.
We had no idea what we were doing. And so, we made the exact mistake that you and I were just describing, which was we went out and built a thing. And I mean, to be clear, we tested it at every step. And, we started off with a landing page that had a survey on it and all of that
Right, the
stuff.
whole
And so
deal.
we were kind of moving in the right direction. But the reality was that we were not rigorous enough in learning about what the need was before we went out and tried to create a solution for that need.
Right.
And so ultimately it failed, but we learned a ton in the process.
You always do. You learn more. That's the ironic part of life, right?
Of
You learn
course.
more from failing than you do from succeeding. So basically, you brought a solution to a problem you didn't know if existed or not. Like, people were fine with whatever,
Right. Well, and we assumed that because we had the problem that certainly other couples must as well. And of course,
Right.
it's the same trap
Not
that
the case.
many entrepreneurs
Yeah.
get caught in.
It's funny because
Uh,
online dating is a little bit off the topic, but online dating used to be like, oh, you met somebody online. Now you're like, you met them in person. How do you know anything
Right.
about them?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right. So it's totally flipped the other way around, where you want
Yes.
to have like a whole dossier on somebody before you even see them,
Right.
which is pretty funny. Okay. So that failed. Great learning experience. We're already
Yes.
teaching people. Where'd you go from there?
From there, I became head of product for an AI company that was focused on helping machines understand the content of video across the timeline. And
Interesting.
so it was fascinating, and I really
Like
enjoyed.
the early days of any kind of AI, right? Basically.
Yeah, this was, oh boy. Let's see. This would have been 2014 or so.
Okay.
So it was pretty early on. We were focused on what's called human in the loop computation. And so we were using people to help adjudicate and kind of review metadata around video content. And the real key there was, at the time, if you looked at the way that search engines, for example, saw a video, your video that was posted on YouTube was just a thing. It was a black box that
Right.
contained a video.
Yeah, there was no
and the
content
data
to look at.
Exactly. The
Right.
data that, Google could access, for example, was the title, the description, the
Show
tags,
notes,
things
right.
like that.
Yeah.
But it didn't give you the insight as to, all right, this is a 20-minute video, and, the first minute is a Ferrari and a Porsche drag racing. And,
Right.
from there it gets into an old Model T or, whatever it was. And so we were trying to solve that problem of literally understanding kind of moment to moment across a video, what was happening within that black box. And the potential for it was really kind of mind-boggling if you thought about the ability to search within a video and understand exactly what was happening within any given moment, the ability to place products in relevant kind of places within that video, or to advertise against that video in a relevant manner, was all kind of the potential that we were trying to unlock as we were getting through it. And so
Which they do on YouTube today, right? I mean, don't the algorithms kind of because basically what you're doing is you're mining data from a video that doesn't have data. So you're like the algorithm's creating the data and then saying, okay, this is relevant or not. It's like this system we do create show notes for me. It's like a transcript of the show, but it's based on what we're talking about. It doesn't, not based on any visual things about what's going on in the show, right? So that's interesting. But now it's come full circle.
Yes, now it's gotten much easier. And of course, with the advent of Gen AI and the ability for, machines to kind of understand things more clearly, it's become much easier to achieve the outcome that we were striving for 10 years ago.
So what happened to that company? You were 10 years behind where you were early on.
We were early on, and there was a lot of shiny object syndrome in that organization. And, I call shiny object syndrome kind of that need to always focus on the thing that somebody has just said to you, or that somebody has just said that they want. And so, unfortunately, the double-edged sword of looking for customer feedback is that you have to learn how to sift and sort through that feedback
Right.
to figure out what's relevant and what's not. And
Yeah.
the danger zone then is that if you don't do a good job of sifting and sorting, then you end up trying to address every piece of feedback or every desire that comes in from a customer, and you end up running in 100 different directions at once and getting pretty much nothing accomplished.
Yeah, you have to have your what's the word? Your methodology, or however you approach your data,
Yes.
and stick to those metrics, right? Because if you
Yes.
don't, you're going to be all over the place.
Right. Exactly. You have to
Right.
understand what your North Star, what your vision is, and then figure out how those moments of feedback align to the the pushing forward of your vision.
Right.
And so, ultimately what you're aiming for is, all right, this piece of feedback gets us closer to the North Star. This one does not. So that one goes away, and this one we
Right.
consider.
Oh, you mean people aren't just going to like ask their customers? The customers are going to tell them what they want, and like a revelation, they're like, great, and we'll build it this way, and everything works, right? Like, I mean, it's a
Only in the
revelation for
best
people.
possible universe.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's complicated. So,
Yes.
so after that company, what happened? Well, you were telling me what happened with that company. Did it get shut down, acquired? Somebody bought the technology?
I left that company, and eventually it did sort of merge in with another organization that had previously been a client. And I'll be frank, I don't know exactly what they're up to these days, but
Right.
I moved on. And
where'd you move on to?
from there, I moved on to a role at Legendary Pictures, the movie studio.
Oh, okay.
One of the folks who was involved in the previous company had gone over there and kind of hired me in behind him. And so we were on like a little 6-man SWAT team that was focused on helping envision opportunities for the use of technology in entertainment, basically. And so we were thinking about AR and VR and what the opportunities were if you were to approach the creation of movie content or TV content kind of through the lens of AR and VR. We were highly focused on spatial computing and understanding kind of what would happen if people kind of merged the real world experience with the digital world. And then of course we were doing, more brass tacks things like helping their SVOD platform grow and create better technology infrastructure, things like that.
Right. But it sounds like you had kind of moved away from what your original, you're originally an advertising guy, right? That was your training.
Yes.
That was college. Now you're more in the tech, VR, AI, 3D space. It's all. You're not directing the movie, but they're saying, how can we use technology to improve this whole thing?
Exactly. I am no longer a marketing and advertising person, at least at the core.
Right.
I lean on those learnings often, and especially in the world of startups where we're thinking about go-to-market strategy and how you're going to acquire customers. Things like
you need to know.
It's
Sure.
all relevant.
Yeah.
And so it still comes to mind, but I no longer work for ad agencies.
So all the tech background, is it self-taught? Where did it come from?
It is self-taught / the benefit of having been part of a technical team. So I was fortunate that, when I was at Poke at the Innovation Studio, we had a whole team of software engineers and designers and things like that. And I got kind of a crash course into the world of technology and learning what was possible and what was not. And
Right.
I started off by using my lack of understanding to my advantage as best I could, and just kind of ignoring limitations and saying, we're going to make a thing that does this. We can do that, right?
Right. And then
just kind of figuring it out.
Sure.
And then, eventually I just spent enough time around it that I started to understand it for myself and learn, what was possible and what wasn't, and how to communicate with software engineers and all of that stuff. And it kind of became my day-to-day over time.
Got it. So from Legendary Studios, did you go somewhere else, or did you go out into another entrepreneurial venture? Or
I did. So very shortly, as in like the first week of my tenure at Legendary, there was a major shakeup in the executive team, and my team, the kind of small SWAT team, was left sort of without a North Star, or without somebody to guide us. And
Okay.
so we spent a few months sort of puttering around the halls of Legendary and figuring out what we were going to do. And then ultimately a few of us left and started a new company, again, in the video and technology space, primarily focused on helping companies manage and handle the distribution of their large video libraries. So we were working with movie studios. Legendary actually became a client, and we built out a platform that was designed to help with the management and distribution side of all things video.
Got it. So you were on the distribution side where you would distribute it to theaters and, I don't know, Netflix and the stores and that
less
type
theaters.
of stuff?
We effectively created a platform that was like Netflix in a box. So if you had a content library that you wanted to turn into an ad-supported or subscription-supported video platform, we basically had a turnkey solution for that would handle everything from the storage and metadata management around the content itself to the delivery and distribution of that content to the end user through whatever kind of means they wanted. So, whether it was a smart TV app or, viewing it on a mobile device, et cetera, we had kind of all of those distribution endpoints that were ready to go.
And at that point, I guess the internet had progressed to the point where you could do that. I mean, we take
Very
streaming
much so.
very much for granted, but in 1992, when I first heard of the internet, right, 22 years ago, or more than that, was that 32 years? You couldn't do this stuff. I mean, you couldn't load a picture without waiting for it to go each line. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that well.
Everything
Yes,
works
this
now.
was, let's see. This would have been mid to late 2017 that we started this company.
All right.
So we were
infrastructure.
we were pretty far along at that point.
Got it.
Things were much easier.
Why don't we do this? It's been 30 minutes. Let me take a brief commercial break for the people that pay us a little bit of money. And then we can come back. Let's talk about Apollo 21. What's it doing? Why'd you start it? All that kind of stuff. And we'll keep sharing stories. It's great for people to hear
Awesome.
people's stories. All right.
Sounds good.
Okay. Here's a word from our sponsors. Looking to market and grow your business? Or perhaps you're just getting started and want to hit the ground running? AWeber is the best choice for online email marketing and automation of your business. From maintaining a subscriber list to drip campaigns and landing pages, AWeber gives you tools and integrations that make marketing easy and fun. As our partner and sponsor, we use all their tools to promote the podcast and market our law firm. AWeber, the best alternative for online marketing. For over 30 years, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has built a thriving community of forward-thinking CEOs and business owners who want to radically improve their companies. Through unique combinations of one-on-one business coaching, participation in monthly TAB board meetings with other non-competing owners, a suite of strategic tools, and customized strategic planning workshops, TAB membership can deliver greater strength to your business and a better work-life balance for you and your family. All packaged in a streamlined and affordable service that the people at TAB invite you to try risk-free. Are you struggling with managing advertising due to a lack of time or expertise? Perhaps you're facing challenges in scaling ads for your store. Are you feeling lost when strategies have no success? GSM Growth Agency is your reliable partner in overcoming these business challenges. Feel the impact of collaborating with a team dedicated not only to short-term goals, but also to building long-term partnerships and achieving sustained success. Embark on an exciting journey to redefine the possibilities of e-commerce and create a legacy of unparalleled excellence. Take decisive action now. Follow their link in the show notes to receive a complimentary audit of your Shopify store conducted by a GSM expert. Propel your e-commerce game to new heights with GSM Growth Agency. Follow the link in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show. All right, Danny, thanks for, hanging by there on the screen. So
Of course.
we don't have like a green room. I think maybe they've added that feature. I'm not sure, but there didn't used to be. So we just stay on the thing and don't pick our nose or, anything like that. So, all right. So let's get back into it because this is a great conversation today. I love to start off the new season with this kind of stuff. Tell me about Apollo 21, what it is, how it came about, and we can get more into it.
Sure. So Apollo 21 is an innovation and product design studio. And basically, we work with anybody from early stage startups to highly established companies to build technology for their customers, for use inside the house, and to help with defining and executing on innovation strategy. And it came out, It came up kind of opportunistically. So during the last year of my tenure at the previous startup that we were just discussing, we took in some funding from a family office. And one of the stipulations of our funding round was that we needed to help some of the other portfolio companies with their technology efforts. And so
it's like an incubator, an accelerator.
No, it wasn't an accelerator. It was really just a family office that had about a half dozen or a dozen investments, but some of them were commerce focused, for example, and so there was technology involved, but they weren't technology companies at the core.
So there were family offices that had PE investments in these kind of like a portfolio of companies.
Yeah, basically
companies. Okay,
basically. And so I spent about the last year while I was at that company, kind of leading a little SWAT team to help other companies in the portfolio with their technology needs. And so, that was anybody from, security companies to commerce companies and everything in between. And eventually, both the founders of my company and the folks from the family office kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you seem to enjoy this kind of consultative, drop in, help fix things, go away type of work. Would you like to consider going and doing that?" And that led to the birth of Apollo 21.
Got it. So they were your seed funding basically to get started.
No, there was no funding there. It was an opportunity, and the agreement was that they would help funnel in some customers and things like that. But that was about it.
Got it. But it sounds like you guys are now doing technology both. You said inside the house, so you're talking about systems that run their business, that deal with their departments, that process order, whatever it is, and then outside the house when it comes to dealing with customers and communicating. So are those all proprietary? Do you come in and bring what's the platform, Salesforce in, and you guys are Salesforce certified and you program it, do all their in-house stuff? What are you doing?
It varies. Often everything that we build is bespoke based on the customer's needs.
Okay.
What the starting point is depends on what the
bespoke
output
meaning
is.
custom for anybody's listening, right?
Yes, bespoke meaning custom.
Yeah.
So we're not doing Salesforce integrations or anything like that. We do have a piece of foundational technology that Apollo 21 owns that provides kind of the groundwork for a number of our projects. And so basically what we've seen is, there are a certain set of features and capabilities that companies need regardless of what the outcome is. So they need user management, they need data ingest, they need the ability to create and view analytics and things like that. And so Mission Control is kind of like a box of Legos that we created for ourselves that has modules for each of those kind of core needs. And then based on what a customer has asked us to create for them, we sort of dump that box on the floor, we pick out the right pieces and we put them together and then augment them with further custom development to ensure that the platform does whatever it is that they need it to do. And so we've built out implementations of Mission Control that were purely focused on data management and analytics. We have built that platform to be completely process oriented and task management oriented. We've built out that platform to handle alerting and management of alerts for remote security guarding and all sorts of things in between. And then in addition to that, we also build technology products that have nothing to do whatsoever with Mission Control. So as an example, for one of our clients, we built out what is effectively ESPN for rodeo. So we had a big client in the rodeo space. And so we built a consumer facing application that was highly focused and tailored towards that space and keeping rodeo fans, abreast of what was happening with their favorite athletes and their favorite disciplines, things like that.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like it is, what was the word I was just thinking of? I don't remember. I lost my train of thought, but yeah, I understand what you're doing, but it sounds like the customer you have to basically build it custom, right? Every time. Is it in because my son's in the data analytics area. He's a informatics major in college. So he does a lot of programming, warehousing stuff. Is it like Python is it programmed in? Is it,
so across the board,
yeah,
across the board, we're technology agnostic. So basically, if somebody comes to us and they have an ingrained system that we need to either adhere to or to integrate with, we will find the right people to help us with that.
So it's programmed in a certain language. You find programmers who work in that code.
Exactly. And that's one of the advantages that we have of being sort of an elastic organization is that, we have a core team who oversee all of the projects that are happening. And then because we don't keep a whole slew of engineers, for example, on staff, it means that when a client comes to us and says, hey, I have this need and I need it built in this, then we can go and find, exactly as you said, the right people to help create it. For anybody who doesn't have an ingrained system or a language of choice, then generally we work in Node and React, primarily JavaScript, as the kind of foundational language for most of our work. But, that's changing. As you nodded to, Python, for example, is becoming more and more valuable as we get into data and AI requirements and things like that. And so it really varies. We have a couple of frameworks that we use for things like mobile application builds that allow us to build for both iOS and Android at the same time and help us get things to market faster. So we focus on those kinds of things so that we're not writing every single line of code twice, for example, for a mobile app.
All right, I remembered what I was going to ask you. So are you pretty much industry agnostic in terms of the customers that you work with? There's nothing concentrated in a warehousing space or whatever.
Right. So we are industry agnostic. We've done work across remote guarding and security, sports, fitness, music, healthcare, restaurants. I'm probably forgetting one or two, but yeah, we've done work across a huge variety of industries.
Okay. So here's the big question. Do you find that, and I'll follow it up with another question, but do you find that there are themes of things that you see people doing wrong, both inside the house and outside the house, when you come on board?
Yes, without question.
Good.
A lot of what we see is folks that have waited a very long time to try and replace legacy technology, and they've gotten
they shouldn't be using anymore, basically.
Either that they shouldn't be using, or that it's gotten so old that you kind of can't build around it anymore. We're beyond the idea of integrating with a 20-year-old piece of technology, and at that point, we're looking at how do we transfer data from one system to a new system, or how do we force systems to talk to one another that perhaps weren't designed to do so. So, legacy systems that may not have API accessibility that make it easy to exchange data, things like that. And so, I think the biggest piece of advice I can give folks there is don't wait until it's so broken.
Keep up your technology.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta start with the replacement and updating process sooner in order to kind of limit the amount of time and energy that it's going to take to replace something.
Yeah. When I had a bigger firm, we had brought on a small group of guys, and they had a system. I mean, one of the senior partners in his 80s, they had a DOS-based system that would track all of their cases, case management, that was built by some other lawyer who became a technology guy. I don't know, whatever. There was no way to even remove the data, to move it to any. I mean, we had to basically run them side by side till the other one crapped out, and the cases went away. We moved them over. It was just no way. Right. And for those people listening, an API is like a little program, right, that bridges the gap from one piece of software to another, kind of makes them communicate, like Zapier, that website. Those are all APIs, right?
Yeah, so Zapier is built on a series of APIs, and basically an API, or it stands for an application programming interface, and it is a series of endpoints, or a series of communication touch points that are designed to pass information back and forth based on a series of permissions and kind of read-write access for whatever that platform is.
Right, got it. So really old software, they just don't work. There's no way to get the data. It's all locked up.
Right. Yeah. And especially when you're talking about something as old as, a DOS platform or something like that, then that's well pre-API. Okay.
So what are the other common mistakes that you see business owners make, that besides having old technology?
So one of the other things that we see, and this is an interesting one because we've actually built out an entire program around it, but we were talking about it earlier, especially when we're dealing with early stage founders. A lot of founders have a great idea, they scribble it on the back of a napkin or whatever. Maybe they talk to a couple of people, they talk to their wife and their best friend and their mom, all of whom go, "Oh yeah, that sounds great, honey." And then of course, because of all of the literature, if you will, the books that have come out, that teach people how to build a startup, most folks then go, "Oh, I've had a great idea. I validated it with a few people. I need to go build an MVP." And so they immediately start. What's that?
What's that? Build a what?
Build a minimum viable product. So basically, the adage, or the the common nomenclature around how you go about building a company is you figure out what the smallest thing is that people are willing to pay for because it solves a problem, and you build that, and then you iterate on it over time to layer on further functionality, etc. And
Right.
so
Instead of
that's
starting out gangbusters with the big thing and nobody even knows what it is. And
exactly
right.
exactly.
Okay.
And so, the reason that you do it that way is really to de-risk the effort around your new idea or your startup. So
Right.
the thinking is, okay, if I can figure out what the smallest nugget is that somebody will find value in that they'll pay for, and I can go and build that, then I don't have to think about all of the other, 17 different features around it that I think somebody might want. And the trap is feature creep. Every founder looks at it and goes, oh, well, if only it did this, it'll be so much better for my customers, things like that.
Right. And they're wrong.
And so we take a little bit of a contrarian view in that before you ever get to building your MVP, which, let's be clear, you still have to hire designers for, and you still have to hire software engineers for, it still takes time and it still costs money. Before you ever get to that, spend way more time than you think you should talking to potential customers. Right. Understand exactly what their pain points are, understand what the solution is that serves their needs, and make sure that they're willing to pay for it. And if you can do all of that conversationally without having to hire a designer and a software engineer, et cetera, you are that much further along the path of de-risking your idea and limiting the effort and the spend that you will make to get to the point where you have something that is a viable business. And so we have created a program called Launchpad that is explicitly designed to help napkin stage founders get through that process of talking to people and getting really rigorous validation around their idea, so that by the time they go to build something, they know exactly what that thing is that they need to build. They've vetted the top 5 features and they know which 2 of the 5 they actually need to build, so that they can move faster and spend less money to get to the point where they can sell something.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was just talking to another entrepreneur the other day who's now now has a consultancy, but he has several companies, sold them, successful. I think people inherently think that the small business world is full of, coming up with an idea, making a product, and then trying to get people to buy it. Like right. It's totally the other way around, right? You want to, that should be an answered question. Like it shouldn't, it's like going to court. I don't litigate, but if you go to court, you never ask a question you don't know the answer to. Right. So, right. And I think that inherently as entrepreneurs, the average small business owner thinks like that it doesn't work that way. It's like a contest. You have to make the product, buy the product, fill your warehouse up, and then market and get people to buy your stuff.
Right.
And you don't know that nobody wants it.
Right, exactly. But then you have a warehouse full of stuff that you can't sell because now you've discovered nobody wants it.
Yeah. Really bad time to discover it. Or your buddy walks in this shop and he goes, I've seen that before. That's the guy sells it over here. It's half the price. You're like, what? And people make those mistakes all the time because they don't think it should be done any other way. I don't know what it is. I hear this constantly, or I see it constantly, the pattern of, right, coming up with an idea that you think is great, like you said, falling in love with it, mistake number 1, then building this thing, filling up a warehouse of boxes, your garage, whatever it is, and then realizing that, oh, yeah, well, we just weren't able to market it properly, whatever. No, that probably wasn't the issue.
Right.
Probably nobody wanted it. Right. Even though you thought it was a great thing, even though people said, oh, that's really cool, but they don't want to pay for it,
Yes, exactly. And it's that pay for it moment that really kills a business.
Yeah. And it's a tough lesson. Well, you learned it, right? I mean, a lot of people learn it the hard way and they can't recover. They're not, like you're back on the saddle and doing other things and have your business, but some people don't make it to the next one. They're just like, well, this stuff doesn't work. I got to get a job, but they just didn't do it right. Like the fundamentals are out there, right? The fundamentals are out there. You just got to learn them from guys like you, from books, from video, whatever it is. Take a course, go to, I don't know.
Yes. There's a ton of resources out there that can help kind of guide people through the process. And part of the problem is that a lot of those resources, there's so much breadth and depth to what you could learn to understand how to do it correctly. And I'll use that very loosely because correct is whatever works for you.
Yeah.
And, let's be clear about that.
You think it's just overwhelming to people sometimes, right? They don't know where to start.
I think it is. I mean, somebody has a great idea. The first thought when you have that great idea and you go, oh, I'm going to go start a business around this is not, I need to go read 15 books to understand how to go about creating a business around it. But people just want to get started.
right? They just want to get started. It's the creative side of their mind. They don't even want to do the finances. Like, I look at a business plan. There's like four. I know you look at business plan templates, right? They're 8 to 10, 12 sections, right? There's basically four things. There's one about your product and service, what it is. There's two about the people you need to run the business with you, which may not just be you. You can think you can do everything. There's three is all the marketing stuff you're talking about, the marketplace. Does it exist? Do people want it? How do we sell it? Whatever. And then there's the finances. Well, nobody wants to talk about that. I mean, that's boring. Right. But you don't even know. You might be out of business before you even get started if you don't do some basic, projections of what your costs are going to be. And we're going to have to sell this at $7.99 a thing just to break even. Well, nobody's going to pay that much for the product. So now you're in trouble. So they don't do the work up ahead of time. But you're right. You go to somebody, I don't know what to do. What do I get started? You get 15 different opinions about where you should start, what you should read, what course you should take. Talk to this guy. Danny does this. Or my buddy Jack does this. And talk to Bob. And then, analysis of paralysis, you don't know where to start. But you have to get started. And I agree with you. If you have a good idea, start reading books. Start watching videos about how to start a business, the mistakes people have made, and how to do it the right way. And you'll probably be disappointed at first as to how you should go about it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the beginning parts, the foundations are boring. Is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, because nobody wants to and I think to some extent, if you're in love with an idea, you don't really want to find out it doesn't work, right? You just believe it will. You're going to make this work. This is important to me. It's got to be important to other people. And it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. Okay, so this is great because we've shared a lot of good ideas about, how to do things the right way and how to get things going. What's the future of Apollo 21? Like, what's going on there? First of all, how long has it been in business now?
We're about 3.5 years old now.
Yeah, so you're still a young company.
Yes.
And a lot of it's virtual, because a lot of your programmers are not sitting in a warehouse somewhere. They're all over the world.
Our team is fully remote.
Yeah. Yeah. So you don't even have an office at all?
Nope.
And what's the company consist of? You got partners? What's the structure?
I have two folks that are kind of my core leadership team, one that runs engineering, one that runs product development. I have, some help in the back office side of things, finance and all of that stuff. And then, as I described earlier, beyond that, we are primarily an elastic team. So we have a couple of partners that we turn to time and again to staff up when we need it. And at this point, we've worked with many of the team members on their team and have, built a lot of trust and a lot of knowledge around their skill sets and where they excel. And so when we have a new project that comes in, we staff up that project, we dedicate that team to the project so that there is continuity across the board. And then, when a project ends, which we fully expect that it will at some point, in fact, one of our core operating principles and one that I think makes us unique is that we fully expect our customers and our clients to outgrow us. And
if you're doing your job, right?
Exactly. If we've been successful in helping them build a new product and take it to market, for example, then at some point they're going to come to us and say, okay, guys, this is great, but it's time for us to internalize this. We now need a software engineering team, et cetera. And we will go so far as to help them build that team from the get-go so that when they hit the point of comfort, that team can transition over to the client and continue right along and, keep building the product and ensuring that it's working correctly with the full knowledge of everything that has happened up to that point.
Right. So those people are like contracted maybe through a temp agency or a staffing agency.
Yeah.
And then, so how many full-time employees do you have?
5.
Okay. And they're all in different parts of the country?
Yep. They're all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, look, the world has technology obviously lends itself to that, right?
Yes.
But beyond like selling something that's tangible, you have to be in front of somebody to sell like a car or something like that, or even those are selling online too. There are businesses where you have to be in person, but most of the businesses going to the office and getting on the phone and connecting with people, you could do that from your house.
Yes. Which is exactly where I am.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So any last advice or thoughts, or how do people get in touch with you, by the way, if they want to interact with you, see what Apollo 21's doing, follow you?
Yeah, so there's a couple of really good places to find us. So one is our newsletter. We have a weekly newsletter called Innovate, Disrupt, or Die, which is available at innovatedisruptordie.com.
Okay.
And every week we share an article and an article that we've written, a few must reads that we've discovered online, and then a survey question that helps us kind of gauge the market. And we share the results of that data collection, in future editions. And then the other place to find us is our website, apollo21.io, number 21. We have a bunch of case studies outlining how we work, the work that we've done, the results that we've driven for our clients, and of course, a bunch of great articles and white papers around sort of what to expect from your efforts in innovation and building a new product, things like that. And then, of course, we're on all of the requisite social media, both as Apollo 21 and then myself personally. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I'm blah, 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 / among many.
I think you gave me those links. We'll put them in the show notes for sure.
Perfect. Awesome. That's great.
All right.
Yeah, so that's where to find us. And then I have 2 pieces of advice that I usually share. First one is relatively pat. One, it will always take longer than you think it will. And it doesn't matter what it is.
Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, it will always take
home, building your software, starting your company, always. That's a truism. Yeah,
definitely. And then the second is a bit of a personal mantra, and it aligns to a lot of what we've been talking about, Mitch, but it is fail beautifully. And it aligns perfectly to the idea of failure as a learning experience, and the notion that if you're trying to do something and trying to accomplish something, especially in the space of innovation and technology, you're going to fail along the way. And, the key there is not to let it sort of get you down, but rather understand that you haven't really failed. You've just learned what not to do along the path.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. I think that if you have that expectation. I'm not saying you just believe you're going to fail, right? Not everybody does that, but we all struggle. If you have that understanding that that's a good chance, first time, whatever, it is not such a big impact on your psyche, right? When it happens, you're just like, okay, what did I learn from this? I got through this pretty unscathed. Hopefully you didn't lose your life savings or whatever. Maybe. And what did I learn from this? And I think if we do have that healthier approach, people wouldn't give up as much. They would just look at it as one step in the process.
Exactly. Well, it comes back to that idea of falling in love with the problem. If you're in love with the problem, then failing in one attempt to solve it,
the problem's still there, right? You still got it. Right. Exactly. If you fell in love with the solution, now you don't have anything.
Right. That's exactly right. Then you got a warehouse full of whatever that can't sell.
Exactly. All right. Well, Danny, I can't thank you enough for spending, almost an hour with me. And, let's see what Apollo 21's doing in the future.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beineckerlaw.com.
The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinecker and produced by Beinecker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beineckerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.